So good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. So to begin, do you mind telling us about your military service? What branch were you in? What was your job?
Yes, I was in the United States Navy, and I was medically retired in 2015, so I served for 5 years.
Cool. And what was your rate, if you don't mind me asking?
I was a night seaman, so I was an electrician for combat systems on a destroyer.
Nice. I'm a Navy guy myself, so trust me, I get that. Nice. So 5 years in the Navy. And how did you find yourself here at Columbia University?
It was actually a really long transition. I'm here from New York. So after my service, I returned back here and I got recruited to work for the United States Air Force as a civilian. After a few years of doing that, I really wanted to help advance services for veterans. So I started looking into higher education, and I looked up Columbia University and I saw there was a track for non-traditional students.
Cool. So in your journey to here, what resources, if any, did you lay into besides just Google and Columbia?
I definitely tapped into the resources of my peers since I was on an Air Force base. I was able to talk to some of the officers and figure out what their transition was like, whether they went to college or not, and they were able to help me with letters of recommendations and
cool.
letting me know how to schedule my classes.
That's awesome. Cool. So 5 years in the Navy, you're at Columbia now. Did you face any challenges when you first showed up here on campus?
Yes, I did, because I am a commuting student and I'm also a parent. So one of the challenges that I faced was getting to know other people and having some peers that I could depend on emotionally as well as academically. What really helped me with that was MilVets and knowing the other veterans, and they were able to kind of relate to my experience as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I was also a commuter my first 2 years here, so trust me, I fully understand that. 2 hours to the suburbs of New Jersey every day is quite daunting. But that being said, you mentioned that you found a community here on campus, specifically in the MilVets community. Do you mind talking about your time with the MilVets community, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I actually met the MilVets at orientation in fall of 2019 before the pandemic took us online. And Rachel Ballou was the president. She was a Marine and a female. So I really got to know her. I really loved her energy. And Randy Howard was the female vet rep at the time. So they kind of took me under their wing and mentored me. But I attended a lot of our social events and our veteran career initiatives. And that's how I got involved in the organization.
Cool. That's awesome. Sweet. So back to your time here on campus. What do you major in?
I'm majoring in psychology.
All right, so something that we see a lot, especially in the enlisted community, is that veterans and people in the military community in general think that they need to have a specific path when they go to college. They need to know what their major is, and they need to know exactly what it is they're doing when they discharge. So you mentioned that you got out, you worked in the Air Force, and then you ended up here at Columbia. So before I asked you what your major was, and you said you're a psychology major, so would you say that your time in the military or your time working for the Air Force helped shape you into the psychology major you are today?
Absolutely. My transition experience outside of the military alone is something that I'm very passionate with helping veterans with. I think a lot of times there's a stigma that veterans have some sort of mental health ailment that is associated with combat, and a lot of the times the day-to-day transition kind of gets overlooked. As a veteran who has experienced that, I think that my expertise in that field would actually help change the way we approach veteran treatment, yes.
Cool.
And I also worked in the Health and Wellness Center with the Air Force, so I was able to get an intimate look at some of the needs of our veterans.
Cool. So would you say that experience has helped you enrich the classroom environment here on campus?
Absolutely. I think that some of my papers that I've done extremely well were ones that I could connect my actual personal experiences with the material or the criteria of the papers. I don't think I would be able to excel without it, to be very honest.
Awesome, I love it. Cool. What would you say that you want to do with your psychology degree long term, or have you already started pursuing any sort of professional development using that degree?
So I'm up in the air between pursuing law, which is not clinically focused with psychology, but I also think about pursuing psychology in a clinical field. So what I'm doing is looking at joint dual degree programs after I graduate with social work and law, but I'm still up in the air with that.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm applying to law school right now too, so trust me, you have a resource should you need it in the future.
Thank you.
And finally, what advice do you have for that, ITSN in the Navy who might be getting out after just doing one enlistment and looking at college, or the E7, the crusty chief who's getting out after 20 years who wants to apply to college?
I would definitely say to tap into the resources of the people who have already transitioned before you, figure out what they did, figure out how they tailored their resumes. I think one of the hardest parts about transitioning is that people don't know how to change the language of their expertise in the military to one that a civilian would understand.
Awesome.
So learn how to translate your skill set to actually match what the company needs or the school needs.
Cool. And before we end, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience who may be watching?
Yeah, don't discount yourself. Don't sell yourself short. I'm a first generation student, so coming to an Ivy League was definitely not something that I thought I could do. But take a chance on yourself and you never know where you end up.
Cool, I love it. Ebony, thank you so much for your time today. It's been incredibly informative.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.